Lay. Okay. Today we are starting on page 14 with, oh, I really don't need to project that, do I?
Why not?
I don't know how that happens. Okay, so we are on Pilgrim number 4. If you want to get your computer so that you can type your notes.
The prioress.
We're on the prioress, yes. Morgan and Taya also have vocab this week if you are claiming your extra credit. Okay, so on Thursday we read the introduction plus the knight, the squire, and the yeoman, who those 3 were traveling as one group. And so today we meet Pilgrim number 4, who is not connected to the knight's traveling party. Also, you can see in the little side note, number 40, that a prioress is the supervisor of an abbey. So what's an abbey?
Basically a church, but only run by women.
A church, it's a building for monks or nuns. It's like more like a, I don't know what to describe. So it is a church, but it's also like a dorm. Like they live there, they stay there all the time. And so the prioress is like the superintendent of the building. Okay, so does she go in the?
God bless.
Does she go in the regular people pyramid or the church pyramid? Church. High, middle, or low?
Maybe low middle-ish.
Okay, middle, but probably low middle or middle. Like she's not a super high ranking, but she would be higher up than say like Friar Tuck type people. Okay? Not as high as the bishop from Robin Hood, but higher than Friar Tuck. Ready? Page 14. There was also a nun, a prioress, who in her smiling modest was and coy. Her greatest oath was but by Saint Eloi, and she was known as Madame Eglantine. Full well she sang the services divine, intoning through her nose becomingly, and fair she spoke her French and fluently. After the school of Stratford at the bow, for French of Paris was not hers to know. At table she had been well taught withal, and never from her lips let morsels fall, nor dipped her fingers deep in sauce, but ate with so much care the food upon her plate, that never driblet fell upon her breast. In courtesy she had delight and zest. Her upper lip was always wiped so clean, that in her cup was no iota seen of grease, when she had drunk her draught of wine. Becomingly she reached for meat to dine. And certainly she was of great disport, and full pleasant, and amiable of port, and went to many pains to put on cheer of court, and very dignified appear. Okay, so I gotta tell you a little story about this. So when people would eat together, it was like always a gathering. People always ate together because getting food, preparing food, it was like a whole process, right? It's not like dump the rice-a-roni into the pan, add the water and the butter, and put a lid on it, and 25 minutes later, voila, you have a meal, right? It's very complicated. So people ate in large groups, number 1. Number 2, there's not a lot of trade to the Far East, like China, Japan, India at this time. And that's where most of the seasonings that we use today originated. Like seasoning food came from not England. Remember that first video we watched in the satire with the class. The kids were in sarcasm class. And the one guy said, the food in England is so good. And then the other guy says, yeah, I love to eat food that has no taste. Okay, so England is not known for its food. Okay, it tends to be pretty bland and plain. Alright, so let's say it's the Middle Ages. Your family food gatherer goes out and kills a duck. Plucks it, brings it in, you cook it in a pot, right? The drippings that are left over from that cooking are used as a sauce for the meal. Okay, anybody's family do that today? Absolutely. The best gravy is made from the drippings from the meat, right? Like raise your hand if your mom makes, or your dad, whoever cooks in your house, makes homemade gravy. You don't know? Oh my gosh.
My grandma does too.
Do any of you eat gravy from a can? Or jar? You don't know? Okay, well. Anyway, yeah, it's disgusting. But the best gravy comes from the dripping. So, like, my favorite is, like, white gravy, chicken fried steak, or, like, fried chicken gravy. So you make the stuff in a pan, right, and it's left all this oil, and it's got the little crumblings and goo from the meat, and you pat it down with flour. So you make it into a big ball of goo with flour, and then you add milk, and you heat it up, and you whisk it, and it turns into white gravy. It's absolutely delicious. When I make fried chicken, I usually don't eat the chicken. I just get a bowl and eat the gravy by itself. No potatoes or anything. Just the gravy. It's so good.
Put it on bread?
Just in a bowl by itself. Okay, so it's the Middle Ages. They don't have milk that they would waste on gravy. They don't have flour that they would waste on gravy. So they literally just take the juice and they put it in a pitcher. Now, who eats prime rib? Especially like at holiday time, which is coming up, right? Do any of you take that little jar, you have some kind of like pitcher, or maybe you just use a measuring cup, you put it on the table with the au jus in it? Basically the same thing, right? It's just the fat and grease mixed with some liquid. Usually put some water or something in there, season it up, so you can dip your meat in it. Okay, what we're talking about right now in this story is that, except it hasn't been seasoned or flavored. You literally just dump the stuff from the pot into a pitcher and you set it on the table. Now, there would be a pitcher with the au jus in it, we'll call it, but everybody doesn't have their own little dish. Like at my family, like we have these little white dishes that we put the au jus in, and everybody gets their own, right? They have like maybe 4 of them at the whole table, and there's like 20 people gathered around. So when it's my turn to eat, I get the little bowl passed to me, and I dip my meat in it, and then I have to hurry up and get it in my mouth. Okay, you also might dunk your bread in there, right? And sometimes at the end, you would get to take a sip of that leftover stuff. Okay.
Meat.
The prioress, how good are her manners? Very good. After she dips her meat, she is so neat and tidy that she never dribbles on her shirt. Who could be that lucky in here? Definitely not me either. Okay. So she never dribbles on her shirt. Also, after she has drank that, she wipes off her mouth so daintily with her napkin that when she takes a drink out of her goblet, there's no grease film inside of it. So she's very neat and tidy. P.S. When we were on the cruise, and then this weekend we went to kind of a nicer restaurant with Eliza and Andrew, and they had cloth napkins. Oh, cloth napkins and children are a terrible idea. And then I made the mistake of ordering barbecue chicken wings. So here's Kellen. He's got barbecue sauce up to his elbows in this dang cloth napkin, and it's covered in barbecue sauce. It's disgusting. Thank God it was black. Anyway, Kellen and this lady could not sit at the same table because Kellen would have barbecue sauce on the cup, grease inside the cup, stuff all over his shirt, hot mess express. But Madame Eglantine, she is very well put together. Where was she trained in terms of manners?
I don't know, a nun.
No?
School.
No?
Wasn't it the school at Stratford at the Bow?
Yep.
City outside London.
Yep. She was trained at a special school at Stratford at the Bow. She can also speak some French, which means her family was probably wealthy before she took on this job as prioress. So
She was taught where?
What line is that on?
12, no, 8, sorry, 8. You don't need to know where, but you just need to know that she's been like formally trained. Also, total side note, my mom graduated from high school in 1976. Her dream, what she wanted to do was go to this refining school, literally, in some town in Florida, I can't remember where you literally are trained to like become a member of the upper class. Like she would literally have gone to classes to learn about which silverware, which fork, which cup. She ended up becoming a bartender as part of her training, but because there's all these like classes about what kind of drinks are made in what glasses. So like martinis go in the cups that look like this, and drinks made with a dark liquor that have nothing with them go in a lowball cup, but drinks that are mixed, like a Tom Collins, goes in a highball. These are the ones that have these like big, thick piece of glass at the bottom, you know? You like look at it and it looks like it's really light, but actually it's heavy.
Like
Some wines need to go in a cup like this,
Goblet-ish.
but some wines need to go in a little stubby cup. And some of them go in a cup that has a teeny stem and a huge cup at the top. Okay, she was gonna go learn this. She made money in college by modeling for pantyhose. Literally putting pantyhose on and sticking her leg out. Like her leg was on the cover of pantyhose packaging somewhere in America or some country. I don't know. Anyway,
That's pretty wild.
so even in 1976, what I'm trying to tell you is finishing school, where you go to learn to be fancy, still existed in 1976. Because that's where my mom went.
What year did she graduate? What year would she be modeling?
I don't know, in late 70s, early 80s, I don't know. She said she doesn't even know what company of pantyhose it was. She can't remember.
I'm searching it up.
There used to
right
be some fancy brands called Legs. They came in eggs, so it's L, little L, and then
now.
E.
Sheesh, I'm probably gonna get in trouble for looking at this.
EGGS, and the pantyhose came in these little plastic eggs. That was one brand that I used to have to wear pantyhose all the time.
Why?
Oh, my grandma and my mom were fancy. When in 1992, I was 8 years old, and my grandma made my 7-year-old sister and I
There it
go
is.
through like
Find your mom.
this whole training on how to sit and eat dinner because we were going to Massachusetts to my aunt's wedding, and so we had to practice like how to sit up and how to ask for things and how to pass and where you start with your forks and knives and cups and
I think it'd be awesome to still do that, like, you know,
What?
like
Yeah.
to
Be fancy like
proper.
Applebee's?
On a date night.
Okay, so the moral of the story is this is what Madame Eglantine, what kind of training she would have received at this school, and all my only story about my mom and her education is that people in clear up until the 1980s were still doing this, still training people in this way.
Do they still do that?
Can't you still do like finishing
So-
school in the morning?
I'm sure you can. My cousin has a degree in hospitality and customer service or something. So like she learned, she used to work at the MGM casino in Las Vegas as one of the event directors. And so her only job was to walk around the dining rooms and make sure the tables were set correctly. Like the serving, like the wait staff, the low people on the totem pole come in after the meals and they change the tablecloths and put on new tablecloths with new serviceware, and she would make sure everything was done correctly. She would train the staff on how to correctly set the tables, and then like when you bring the pitcher of water in, which side you go on, what side you bring coffee, how do you serve a drink, how do you serve the meals. So, yes, it's a whole career path if you're interested. You probably can't live here in central Nebraska and do it, but even in Kearney, like the dinners, like the fancy dinners they have at the hotels are nothing compared to fancier places. So, okay, so this lady is one of only 2 people in this whole story that have a name, by the way. Everyone else is just referred to by their stereotype position, but the prioress gets a first name. Okay, I'm on line 25. 24, actually. And to be thought worthy of reverence was kind of the ending of that. So she deserves like the respect of other people. But to say something of her moral sense, she was so charitable and piteous that she would weep if she but saw a mouse caught in a trap, though it were dead or bled. And she had some little dogs too that she fed on roasted flesh or milk and fine white bread. But sore she'd weep if one of them were dead, or if men smote it with a rod to smart, for pity ruled her and her tender heart. So not only is she fancy, she's also
Applebee's.
super nice, sympathetic, very like charitable. Full properly her wimple pleated was, so that's her thing that nuns wear that has like all the fancy crisp lines that are folded and pressed. Yep. Her nose was straight, her eyes as gray as glass, her mouth full, small, and also soft and red. But certainly she had a fair forehead. It was almost a full span broad, I own. For truth to tell, she was not undergrown.
So she's big.
Yeah, like thick with 2 C's big, like good, the good kind of big. Okay. Also, one of the distinguishing characteristics of beauty during this time period was how broad your forehead was. Hers was a full span, meaning a 5-finger forehead. So if you put your pinky finger at the right in line with your eyebrows, however far you can go. So I'm solid. I only got a 4. Anybody got less than a 4-finger forehead?
So you
Tamron's
your eyebrows.
seems
She
short.
might be
like,
able to get all 5.
Mine feels like 3.
It's like 3 and a
Didn't
half.
you know
Yeah. Good.
I don't even
Okay,
know.
so the broader your forehead,
Boston
the taller
might
your
get you
forehead.
about 7.
Bigger the brain.
the better looking you were. Okay,
So
Do
the
not
bigger
tell
the
that
forehead
kid that.
you were.
the more beautiful you were. Yes.
Wow, times have changed.
Okay.
I didn't make fun of for a big forehead.
Full stylish was her cloak, I was aware. Of coral, small about her arm she'd bear a string of beads, godded all around with green, and from there hung a brooch of golden sheen, on which there was first a crowned A, and under Amor Vincent ammonia. Another little nun had with her had she, who was her chaplain, and a priest. She had 3. Okay, so she is big, voluptuous, maybe is a good word, but you
Was
people
it
would
like
just
plum?
say 2C thick.
I thought she was thick.
Okay. She has gray eyes, red lips, full mouth,
Gray eyes.
good forehead.
Just like dull.
Just pretty.
So she had 3 priests with her and 1 nun or chaplain.
Yes, so this is character number 5, 6, 7, and 8. So character 5 is her chaplain. So the prioress's chaplain, secretary. And then number 6, 7, and 8 are the nuns' priests. So you can number those 6, 7, and 8 are the nuns' priests. So the next person we're going to write about is going to be number 9.
So person 5 is what?
Person 5 is the prioress's secretary.
Good job.
5 through 8 are just
6
back to
through
back, right?
And then
through 8.
6, 7, and 8 are the nuns' priests. Or the prioress's priests.
So like
I
5
don't
through
get
8
it.
are
I don't
just
get why we're
the
numbering
priests.
it.
Because these are all the people that are
Because we're numbering all the pilgrims.
Bye.
Like 20
Yeah, so
pilgrims,
like
right?
all take a
four,
number.
4 should have a number.
Like
So,
the
like,
knight is
The
flying.
knight is
Number one.
person 1,
Squire,
the
yeoman.
squire is person 2, the yeoman is person 3, and the prior is person 4.
And the
Okay.
So
prior.
then
yeah.
5 is the secretary,
I don't know
6,
about you
7,
guys,
and
but
8
it's
are
numbered in
the
my book.
priests.
Mm-hmm.
It is?
Like,
Yeah, she had 3 priests
no,
and a
it's just in
chaplain.
pencil.
So
then
there's party of
what's
5.
number 5?
Probably the book missing what you
Secretary.
three had.
The nun's secretary. Or the
That's
prioress is.
5.
prioress is
Prioress'
secretary.
secretary is 5.
Yep.
And then 6, 7, 8 is priest.
6, 7, and 8.
Prior should be the number
Yeah,
4.
yeah.
So the prioress secretary is number 5.
Yes.
So is the secretary the same thing as the
Chaplain.
nun?
Yes.
Extra
I
nun.
don't know.
6, 7, 8. Priest, nun.
Nuns.
Nun.
The nun's priest. So nun possessive. The nun's priest 1, nun's priest 2, nun's priest 3. Those are numbers 6, 7, and 8.
So the monk is supposed to be 6.
The monk is number 9.
Yeah.
We just don't get to learn about, like, you don't get to learn their character.
Because they're not irrelevant.
Yeah.
Well, if they were irrelevant, they're already in the book.
Because they're just her little pilgrims.
So
monk is
the way
black,
that I
right?
envision it
Yes.
is, you know, the host was going around that night and chatting everybody up. He didn't make it to those 4. So he mentions them because they're included, but he doesn't have anything to say about them because he didn't get a chance.
So, like the prioress, she just has her group over there, and it's like her secretary, and then just those 3.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, number 9, the monk. And it has a side note that says, clergymen who swore to withdraw from worldly affairs and live in a monastery. Right, so a monk is the opposite of a nun, like, or not, I don't know, they're the same, but one's a boy and one's a girl. So they live a life of solitude. They're supposed to lock themselves away and live in a monastery. And one of the most important jobs that monks had during this time period was as a transcriptionist. So they would take books and they would copy them down. They were one of the few people in the world who knew how to read and write.
Both.
So they would copy text. So like the Bible was the most copied text, obviously, but they also copied other things. Remember we talked about that with Beowulf, how they would throw in some religious references when they thought it was getting a little bit too heathen-like.
Yeah, one minute he's fighting Grendel, the next he's praying to God.
Correct. Okay, ready? A monk there was, one made for mastery, an outrider who loved his venery, a manly man to be an abbot able. Full many a blooded horse had he in stable, and when he rode, men might his bridle hear, a jingling in the whistling wind as clear, aye, and as loud as does the chapel bell, where this brave monk was master of the cell. The rule of Marcus, or Saint Benedict, by reason it was old and somewhat strict. This said monk, let such old things slowly pace, and followed new world manners in their place. Okay, so, what's a monk supposed to do?
Stay in the monastery.
Stay in the monastery, swear off worldly goods, live a life of poverty and seclusion. How about this monk?
Nah, he'll just go hunt.
Nah, not about that life. He says, old things are fine, but new things are sometimes better. He has a stable full of the best horses. Because he wants them, not because he needs them.
What was that? Psycho? Blizzard. Cancel the call.
Okay. He cared not plucked a start over. He cared not for that text. A clean plucked hen, which holds that hunters are not holy men, nor that a monk, when he is cloisterless, is like unto a fish that's waterless. That is to say, a monk out of his cloister.
Our school motto is instilling pride and inspiring others. Please join me in saying our motto. Instilling pride, inspiring others. Please stand to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Announcements for October 31st. Junior Career Day at work tomorrow. TV attack volleyball at high school. Gym tomorrow. Unified bowling at Malcolm on Wednesday. Picture retake Wednesday. UNMC backstage pass field trip Omaha Wednesday. Departure time Scotia 5:45 a.m. Greeley at 6 a.m. Wallback at 6:50. Football quarterfinals at Wallback first BDS Friday at 6:30 p.m. Lunch today: ham patty, bun, french fries, baked beans, corn, pears, orange shell. Breakfast tomorrow: egg omelet, toast, cereal, fruit.
Ham sandwiches.
Lunch tomorrow: cream chicken with biscuits or rice.
Just what I wanted. Cold ham.
Yeah, but we.
I love cold ham sandwich.
Provide academic and social opportunities for all individuals to experience, explore, and expand to become successful citizens. Quote: every day may not be good, but there's something good in every day. Have a good day, Cougar.
Okay, so he's giving some examples of like what they're called adages, like these little sayings that people would just know. Like some that we have are the early bird gets the worm. Okay, that's an example of this little type of saying. So he's using these examples as reasons why he chooses to be an untraditional monk. Okay, so according to the expectations, he should stay in his cloister. That's the building, like the room where he would be living, or possibly could be the outfit of a monk, depending on translation.
So
Okay, so the saying says that a monk who is cloisterless is like a fish that is waterless. But he says, no, forget that old saying. Okay?
he doesn't want to live in a broom closet?
No, he does not. Okay. And I said his opinion was right good. What? Should he study as a madman would upon a book in a cloister cell? Or yet go labor with his hands and swink and sweat as Austin bids? How shall the world be served? Let Austin have his swing to him reserved. Therefore he was a rider day and night. Greyhounds he had, as swift as fowl in flight. Since riding and the hunting of the hare were all his love, for no cost would he spare. I saw his sleeves were lined around the hand with fur of gray, the finest in the land. Also to fasten hood beneath his chin, he had a good wrought gold, a curious pin, a love knot in the larger end there was. His head was bald and shone like any glass, and smooth as one anointed was his face. Fat was this lord, and stood in goodly case. His bulging eyes he rolled about, and hot they gleamed, and red like fire beneath a pot. His boots were soft, his horse of great estate. Now certainly he was a fine prelate. He was not pale as some poor wasted ghost. A fat swan loved he best of any roast. His palfrey was as brown as is a berry. Okay, so instead of giving up the worldly things, he has the finest what? Like what?
Goods. Like gold.
Horses.
Horses.
Dogs, clothes.
He's got
Clothes.
gold.
He's fat.
He's fat, which is a luxury reserved for people who have
A lot of food.
money and food given to them. Do you think the author respects him
think he does. He's thinking, he's
We'll
changing.
discuss it on Wednesday. Who's not gonna be here Wednesday? Oh, sorry.
Me, unified bully.
You.
Oh, looks like